All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of this podcast, which is called Book Club with Caden Kelly. I'm Caden Kelly, and if you're new to this podcast, I read books, and then I come here live and talk about them. They're all nonfiction books, and I have the intention to the podcast is to keep me accountable to improve my health, my wealth, my well-being, and my peace, the peace that I experience. So I read a lot of books in those areas, nonfiction books, and I come here to talk about them, to understand them a little better, and then I post them on a podcast so that you can understand them as well, and also help improve those areas of your life, because life is hard, and all we can do is do our best, right, to help each other, to help ourselves, and to not be assholes to each other. So this podcast is live on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook on Mondays in the morning-ish time. I used to do it at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Now I'm doing it at around 10:30. I think 10:30 is a good time because I have work stuff that I have to do before I do the podcast. And so I feel I have a clean, clear conscience right now after spending some time. Hey, I've had a great day. I've already had a great morning. I've worked out. I've written in my blog. I have emailed my brother who's on a mission. I sent my crew out, and now I'm here. I made breakfast. I've watered my garden. Garden's looking good. My watermelon plant is coming in real healthy, and my girlfriend planted some cucumbers because I did a transplant with some cucumber plants, and they died really fast. And then my girlfriend replanted some cucumber seeds, and those motherfuckers are the healthiest plants in the garden. So I've had a great morning. How are you doing, huh? Monday, do you get up early still? Do you get after it? Do you work hard? Do you challenge yourself? Because life is hard, and we got audio coming through. Okay, I am not silent. Sometimes I leave the mic on mute for too long. Anyway, also there's a delay on my video still, and I can't figure. So if any of you who are listening to this know how to fix my voice is faster than my video on the live. If any of you know how to fix that, let me know, because I edit it after the podcast when I post it. Sucks. But whatever. Um, if you want to read my blog, I've been, I told you I made a goal. My brother's on a mission, and I want to write and be helpful and inspiring to him. So I made a goal to write at least once a week, and just share with him the things I write in my blog. It's not always sexy, it's not always great, but today was way better than last week, and really, I'm really happy to be back, or to at least make an effort to keep doing that. My blog is cadenkellysblog.wordpress.com. Has access to all of the podcasts. I do a shorter version of this podcast, which is 15 minutes, because if you're already sick of the jibber jabber that I give you here, then you could go over to the 15-minute one. It's called Here's the Point with Caden Kelly. That's on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and I post it on my Instagram as well. But for some reason, I'm having a hard time upload. I'm shy 2 podcasts on my Instagram. I don't know why they're not uploading. I upload them from my computer because the files are big, and I don't send them. They're just already on my computer, so I log into Instagram on my computer, and usually it posts just fine. But I keep getting an error message. I'm gonna try doing a hard reset on my computer after this to try to fix that. But if you know how to fix that too, let me know. I'm not a tech whiz. I'm out here doing a podcast and trying to post all the shit that I talk about. Life's good. Last week we did, what did we do last week? I went mountain biking, jacked at my elbow. I fell on my elbow. You can't, it's not that bad, but it hurts to touch it. I'll roll over, and even my elbow touching my mattress hurts. So I don't know what's going on there, but mountain biking at Snow Basin, so fun. First time I've taken a gondola up somewhere and just did the downhill, because doing the uphill on a mountain bike is really fucking hard, but not doing the uphill and just doing the downhill is a lot of fun. So we did that and hung out, and I spent all day yesterday catching up on this book that I read this last week for today. And I realized that I'm forgetting to mention the book that I'm going to read next week, because I told you that's what I'm going to do, so that you can, if you want to catch up or read along with me, I want to tell you the books that I'm reading. I should just make a calendar and just schedule all the books 4 weeks in advance, so that you can, if you can really plan on it, or if you see a book you like, you can really plan on it. Last week I read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And I don't know why this hasn't popped up on my recommended books on Apple Books before. I actually did some deep dive searching for a book like this, because it's right up the alley of books I want to talk about. It's awesome. It was about religion and politics, which are always hot topics, and it has it's everything to do with morals and the origin of morals and why humans behave and think the way we do, and a lot of human history, or evolution rather, and development, brain development, behavioral development, and it goes hand. It ties in really well with *Sapiens* by Harari and the 21st Century. A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century by Brett Weinstein, and Heather Heng. And then little behavioral references similar to Dopamine Nation by Lemsky, and what are some other ones? Anyway, awesome book. Loved it. It was 12-hour audiobook. And I did a lot of physical reading. I read, I did a lot of sitting down reading this, which has been great. I get a lot. My buddy said he's been listening to the new book by Logic. What's his real name? I just know him by Logic and Bobby Tarantino. But he's been listening to his book, and he said, you know what? Hot take, reading and listening are not even close to the same thing. And I really agree. Listening is way different than reading a book, when I'm reading Bobby Hall. Oh, not Bobby Tarantino, huh? Bobby Hall. Yeah, I read at least, I read more than half of this book, and yeah, you get so much more meat. I'll sit and reread several sentences several times because I know that there's a nugget in there and I miss it, and so I'll reread it, and so like a little less than the first half of the book I listened to, and then I spent probably 8 hours yesterday reading the book to finish it because I only got halfway through the week, and that's what happens. So I had a great day yesterday. The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Let's get into it, huh? Full, real, actual name is Sir Robert Bryson Hall II. Whoa. Actually, full, real, actual name. Is he, isn't Sir, if you're a Sir, doesn't that mean you're, like English royalty? Or, and I thought his dad was a douche. That's what he says in all of his songs. I'm glad that you know, you've been reading his book. Anyway, let's get into it. This book, because it was so dense and longer than normal, I got a lot of details from the book. And before I even talk about it, I want to let me tell you about Jonathan Haidt real fast. Here, I got a picture of him from his book. Yep, it gets blurry when I bring it in closer, but there he is, Jonathan Haidt. He is the Thomas Cooley Professor of Ethical Leadership at New York University's Stern School of Business. He obtained his PhD in social psychology from the University of Pennsylvania in 1992 and then taught at the University of Virginia until 2011. He is the author of The Happiness Hypothesis, Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom, and co-editor of Flourishing, Positive Psychology, and the Life Well Lived. He lives in New York City. He talks a little bit about the happiness hypothesis, that book he wrote. I want to read that one now, because who doesn't like to learn about happiness, and especially from a moral psychologist about, an ethical psychologist about happiness. Yeah. So let's talk about the righteous minds. So lots of gold in this book, and again, I want to keep the episodes relatively, or at least a reasonable time. I've said an hour. I've been good about an hour sometimes, but sometimes I'm like an hour and a half, and I just want to make sure I don't go at least longer than an hour and a half. So I've already thought about it, and I'm gonna there's just like every other book. There's 3 parts, and the 3 parts are his 3 theories, or the 3 philosophies of morality and decision making. They're called. Part 1 is called Intuitions Come First. Part 2 is There's More to Reality Than Harm and Fairness. I got ink on my finger. And part 3 is Morality Binds and Blinds. So I'm going to go through each part, and there's 4 chapters in each part, just like normal. Just like I want to cover everything, and he did a really, really awesome job of summarizing each chapter at the end of each chapter. So the chapter is really dedicated to, the in-depth analysis of the point that he's making, and then he shares tons of studies and tons of research, tons of experiences, all his evidence to validate his claim. And I feel guilty cherry picking the useful information, and it is what it is. If you like what he says, or if you even don't like what he says, you should read the book, because he makes, he just makes really strong claims, or he proposes ideas, and I'm going to just share the ideas, the lessons learned, and but he shares evidence and he has research and data to support everything he says. So it's not like we're just saying it. I'm just saying the shit, but he's explained it. So the chapter, each chapter has all of the research and the data, and then he'll come to the conclusion, come to several conclusions, and then summarize what we've learned. And so I'm going to talk about just a summary. I read the book, and then I went back through each summary and tried to pick out everything that we can learn from each chapter in each summary. And then I have a few things that some other quotes and shit that I took from reading it that I like, just like normal. Mashed potatoes, sup? Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. So let's get started. In the introduction, I took a note that says this book is about why it's so hard for people to get along. This hope is to make, I think I meant this book. This book is to make conversations around morality, politics, and religion more common, civil, and fun for everyone to get along. A lot of people don't get along, and there's lots of contention in the world and news and media and whatever. I mean, how many of you are on Twitter for 20 minutes a day? Every time I'm in a weird Twitter funk right now. I just open Twitter all the time, and I never usually have. I've never loved Twitter like that, but I open it all the time, and people are always bitching on there, and everyone is always complaining in response. So, real good premise for a book. I agree. Why can't we get along, and how we can get along better? That's the point of the book. If only everybody if everyone was trying to get along, we'd get along. But the point is, why are people so contentious anyway? Lots of people they're hot-headed, and they're passionate, and they are undeterred in their beliefs and their reasoning, and why. A lot of it is why that is, where it comes from, why they don't change, and why people can't change, or just choose not to, I guess. And then a lot of it is like the things that influence these people to become this way, and things that we choose. Anyway, let's just get into it. Yeah, I don't want to. Okay, part 1. Intuitions come first. Strategic reasoning second. Chapter 1 is called Where Does Morality Come From? There are 3 main theories. Again, this is just the summary from the whole chapter. There are 3 main theories for moral evolution, morality. The first 2 have been discussed for a long time, and the third is a more recent theory. I don't remember if he proposed it or if he came up with this theory, the third theory. But the first 2 are nativist and empiricist. And then the third, which is more recent, is called rationalist. So the nativist theory is that morality is innate. And you know what? He intentionally saves the definition of morality until the end of the book. He says if I had shared it at the beginning, it wouldn't have made any sense with everything that we were talking about. I wanted to explain it first and then share the definition of morality, because then it would make sense. And I get that, but I'm just going to share with you his definition for morality first. Morality, more specifically, moral systems are interlocking sets of values, virtues, norms, practices, identities, institutions, technologies, and evolved psychological mechanisms that work together to suppress or regulate self-interest and make cooperative societies possible. Yeah, and then right afterwards, he's like, if you apply this to, like, this sounds fascist. This sounds like a fascist definition for morality. And then right here he says, I think my definition works well as an adjunct to other normative theories, particularly those that have maybe that's not the right spot. He says somewhere, in response to this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's his definition for morality. It's a system of values, virtues, norms, and institutions, and a bunch of stuff that evolved psychological mechanisms that work together to suppress and regulate self-interest and make cooperative societies possible. Okay, so keep that definition in mind. If it's simple enough, keep it at the front of your mind. He says from chapter 1, the nativist theory for morality, where it comes from, is that it's innate, that we're born with it, and we just have morality instilled in our bodies, in our brains. The second theory is the empiricist theory. Morality comes from childhood learning. We're taught morality. This is like nature versus nurture, I guess, right? And then the third is the rationalist theory. Again, I think he may have proposed this theory initially, which is morality is self-constructed by children in the basis of their experiences with harm and fairness. So not that you're not taught, children aren't taught morality. They are they construct it by their experiences with harm and fairness. So all three theories hold some water, but I think he's mostly a rationalist. He follows mostly the rationalist theory, and talks about, and like I already alluded to, the second part of this book. So if this rationalist theory is that morality comes from our experiences as kids with harm and fairness, he says in the second part, there's more to morality than harm and fairness. So I think it's pretty safe to assume all three hold some water. There's a whole bunch of influence that goes into the origin of morality and our decision making. So chapter 1 is dedicated to explaining those three theories. Chapter 2, that was chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the intuitive dog and its rational tail. Let's see. In sum, Jonathan Haidt tries to prove that reason is the servant of passion. Reason takes the back seat to intuition. Quote, moral reasoning is part of our lifelong struggle to win friends and influence people. Close quote. Trying to change someone's mind about political or religious issues. So chapter 2 dedicated to he uses this analogy throughout the whole book. He says our rational mind is like a rider, and our rational mind, which is also our like our critical thinking, our decision making. We are a rider on an elephant, and our elephant is our intuition, our instinct, our gut feelings. So he says our mind is, if you think about morality as your gut feelings is an elephant, and your mind, your decision-making process is riding that elephant. You can't control your elephant. It's anyway, yeah. So that's the theory, and it actually is similar, Hayden, if you remember from The Subtle Art, the thinking brain and the feeling brain, where we think that the thinking brain is driving, and the feeling brain is in the back seat, but really the feeling brain is driving. It's the same theory, just a different way to look at it. The feeling brain is driving, and our thinking brain, our rational brain, is trying to talk to our feeling brain. You just read that more recently than I did. I think it's the same theory though. So, but he paints the theory as our thinking brain, or our decision making processes, is the rider, and our intuition, or our gut feeling, is the elephant. And like the part one is called, it's called Intuition Comes First. So our intuition, all our thinking brain does is try to justify, well, not all it does, but instinctively tries to justify our intuition or our gut feelings. Our thinking brain is watching it's holding the reins and thinks that it's in control, but the elephant is really the one it's navigating with its own conscience. It's detached from the rider. They're not the same entity making the same decisions. The elephant makes the decisions, and it decides to go left or right or up or down, and the rider is trying to justify why the elephant is doing that. Hayden says, don't make decisions with your emotions. Dogs and toddlers make decisions with their emotions, and they shit on the floor. Yeah. Yeah, I think Manson is so funny. But yeah, so same analogy. Our feeling brain or our intuition is what is in charge, or it's what's influencing our decisions. And our thinking brain, we can either try to rationalize what our feeling brain is doing or what the elephant is doing, or we can try to influence it. Yeah, and he says that the moral reasoning, like the root of moral reasoning, why we try to reason our intuition, why it does what it does, is part of our lifelong struggle to win friends and influence people. This echoes with all of our evolutionary books, where we want to fit in with the tribe, we want to fit in with the groups, to be part of our group or our tribe usually means survival. And there's a bunch of good feelings that come with working together as a team, and bad feelings by being an outcast or by being rejected by your group. So, and it usually meant death for our ancestors. If you were exiled from your group, then it was tougher to live on your own. So, and we get more into that later too. But the point of the reason why we try to justify our intuition to, we justify our intuition, and two, it comes from the place of trying to win friends and influence people, to stay in the tribe, but also to change people's mind, we reason our intuition, we reason why we feel and react and behave the way we do. That's chapter 2. Chapter 3, elephants rule. I said there are 6 areas to support why our intuitions come first, page 82. Yeah, here we go. So in support of this principle, I reviewed 6 areas of experimental research demonstrating that brains evaluate instantly and constantly. Social and political judgments depend heavily on quick, intuitive flashes. Our bodily states sometimes influence our moral judgments. Like bad smells and tastes can make people more judgmental, as can anything that makes people think about purity and cleanliness. Our body states sometimes influence our moral judgments. Psychopaths reason but don't feel and are severely deficient morally. Babies feel but don't reason and have the beginnings of morality. And the last is affective reactions are in the right place at the right time in the brain. So putting all 6 together is the whole chapter is studies of those things, why he believes, or why he's reasoning that our intuitions come first, and then our brain tries to justify or explain our behavior or our gut feelings. I was actually having a conversation with my mom last night about some religious stuff, and it was the same thing. We have our gut feelings. We have experiences in life, and we have our initial reaction. It's usually emotionally, It's our intuition, and then our brain is trying to rationalize or reason why we feel this way, why this happened, why this didn't happen. All of the possibilities. We try to reason it because one, we want to fit in with the group, and we want to help other people understand what we're saying and influence them to believe and behave the same as us. Again, it's about group cohesiveness. It's like the whole book. So yeah, quote, intuitions can be shaped by reasoning, close quote, but overall, we use reason to justify our intuitions. What was more important to our ancestors? What was more important to our ancestors' survival? Truth or reputation? The answer is reputation. Quote, we are more concerned about the appearance of virtue than the reality. That came from chapter 10. But we are more concerned with the appearance of virtue than we are with the reality of virtue. As long as our peers view us or believe that we're virtuous or doing the right thing because of our ability to influence or reason or rationalize or explain our experience, our intuition, if we're deemed virtuous or morally just, if we're justified, our ability to influence and remain in our groups is higher. It all stems from the desire, our biological desire to survive and to spread our genes. That's we're like every other animal, and we're built to live, to survive, and we're built to fuck. So everything we do is in our biology, our genes is designed to respond that way, to maximize survival and to spread our genes. Chapter 4 is called Vote for Me. Here's why. In sum, there are 5 areas or 5 foundations to support we value. 5 areas to support we value reputation over truth. Oh, maybe they missed a period. I'm good at not taking good notes. 5 areas to support we value reputation over truth. Page 106. All right, let's see what we got. 106. Yeah. Okay. Where'd it go? 5 areas to support. Intuition comes first, strategic reasoning second. To demonstrate the strategic functions of moral reasoning, I reviewed 5 areas of research showing that moral thinking is more like a politician searching for votes than a scientist searching for truth. The first is we are obsessively concerned about what others think of us, although much of the concern is unconscious and invisible to us. 2, conscious reasoning functions like a press secretary who automatically justifies any position taken by the president. 3, with the help of our press secretary, we are able to lie and cheat often and then cover it up so effectively that we convince even ourselves. We actually believe the shit we come up with to explain our gut feelings. 4, reasoning can take us to almost any conclusion we want to reach because we ask, quote, can I believe it? When we want to believe something, I'm going to reread this because I fucked it up. The 4th is reasoning can take us to almost any conclusion we want to reach because we ask, can I believe it? When we want to believe something, but must I believe it? When we don't want to believe something. The answer is almost always yes to the first question and no to the second question. Yeah, so when we want to believe something, we can usually reason ourselves to believe it. If we don't want to believe something, we can usually reason ourselves not to believe it. The 5th point is, in moral and political matters, we are often groupish rather than selfish. We deploy our reasoning skills to support our team and to demonstrate commitment to our team in political and moral matters. Quote, the worship of reason is a delusion, close quote. Our minds serve our intuitions by reasoning our beliefs and judgments. So, yeah, yeah, that's those are 5 areas to support the strategic function of moral reasoning. Why we reason the way we do. We're concerned about what other people think about us. We can justify any position we take. We lie and cheat often to justify them. We can believe things we want. We can find reasons to believe something that we want to, and find reasons not to believe something we don't want to. And we're groupish in political and moral matters. Okay. You see how deep this can get? We could get really deep on all this. So that's the first part. Part 2 is called, where's my water? Part 2 is called There's More to Morality Than Harm and Fairness. How we doing? Let me get some water. All right. Chapter 5, Beyond Weird Morality. Remember the weird acronym from Steven Pinker's book Enlightenment Now? That was the first time I heard about this weird study group. Weird is an acronym for Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic societies. So beyond weird morality, beyond Western, educated, industrial, rich, democratic morality. That's chapter 5. In sum, weird societies, those 5 things, which is us, by the way. We're in the West, we're educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. That's us, and it's the Western world. Weird societies are statistical outliers in many psychological measures. The moral domain for weird cultures is limited to the ethic of autonomy and broad. It's limited to the ethic of autonomy and broad within the religious and conservative moral matrices. So, we're most of the world. Yes. So, in the West, we usually see individuals, like we judge individuals. We judge morality by the individual, whereas most of the world judges morality by the group or by the culture or by the whole of the people. We see objects, and not weird cultures generally see the whole or the group. I think that's the base of chapter 5. Yeah, so part 2 is called There's More to Morality Than Harm and Fairness. We didn't really talk about harm and fairness. I guess if I'm remembering studies from chapter 1 in part 1, when he talks about the functional theory of morality, kids, as they are raised, they learn that it sucks. It sucks to be harmed, and it also sucks to receive when things are unfair, like when some kid gets an ice cream cone and you don't get any ice cream. That feeling sucks too. So the theory is we base our morality on that individual experience and determine it's wrong to harm others and it's wrong to not share equally. Again, it's far more complex than that, but that's the basis. And a lot of the world doesn't operate that way. It mostly the West is it's about the individual. In the West, we see morality or the human experience as the individual. A lot of the world sees morality or the human experience as the group or as the culture. He did a lot of studies in Brazil. I remember him talking about studies in Brazil and studies in India outside of Western cultures. So, and then lots of studies in the US and the UK. So, yeah, chapter 5, weird morality is different than the rest of the world. Chapter 6, taste buds of the righteous mind. Yes. Okay, I like this. So all right, in sum, morality is like taste. Some of us enjoy different parts of morality than others. Our brains are all wired differently. So he proposes 5 taste receptor candidates for the righteous mind. Those 5 are care, fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity. And in part 3 somewhere, we go into more of the genetic tendencies, the things that kind of why some people they have deeper feelings or connections for things like care and fairness and loyalty than others. But in general, morality can be, it can be judged on those 5 levels: care, fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity. And then he always pairs them with their opposites, which are harm, cheating, betrayal, subversion, and degradation. Maybe I'll read them together really fast. The 5 taste buds and their opposites are care/harm, fairness/cheating, loyalty/betrayal, authority/subversion, and sanctity/degradation. And this is a theory, the moral foundation theory, I think is something that he came up with. I think this is his and his team's work. So that's chapter 6. Again, this chapter is called "There's More to Morality Than Harm and Fairness." So we just listed 5 things, and harm and fairness are on that list. Okay, let's keep going. Chapter 7, the moral foundations of politics. Got lots of notes here. I'll start with in sum. In sum, Jonathan Haidt attempts to explain the foundations of human nature using the 5 moral foundations and how they evolved and their counterparts in page 178. Oh, I just had it. Oh, this is a little longer than I thought, but I guess let me read them really fast. It's all good. This book was so good. So much meat to devour. Okay. Let's see. If you look for links between evolutionary theory and anthropological observations, you can take some educated guesses about what was in the universal first draft of human nature. So this is, the origins of early humans, our early ancestors, what was going on in their brain, why they were feeling what they felt, and how it evolved over time. This is like the origins of morality. And then we'll talk about how it applies politically. Again, this chapter is called "The Moral Foundations of Politics," but this is his theory on, or his explanation of where morality began, and then we'll talk about how it evolved. The care-harm foundation evolved in response to the adaptive challenge of caring for vulnerable children. It makes us sensitive to signs of suffering and need. It makes us despise cruelty and want to care for those who are suffering. The Fairness-Cheating Foundation evolved in response to the adaptive challenge of reaping the rewards of cooperation without getting exploited. It makes us sensitive to indications that another person is likely to be a good or bad partner for collaboration and reciprocal altruism. It makes us want to shun or punish cheaters. Early ancestors is I experienced these things in my brain too, as a 21st century monkey brain. But this is his theory on why these foundations started, why they were useful in our evolutionary history, and how they evolved. The Loyalty-Betrayal Foundation evolved in response to the adaptive challenge of forming and maintaining coalitions. It makes us sensitive to signs that another person is or is not a team player. It makes us trust and reward such people, and it makes us want to hurt, ostracize, or even kill those who betray us or our group. The Authority/Subversion Foundation evolved in response to the adaptive challenge of forging relationships that will benefit us within social hierarchies. How many times have I talked about hierarchies? Forging relationships that will benefit us within social hierarchies. It makes us sensitive to signs of rank or status, and to signs that other people are or are not behaving properly given their position. And the last is the Sanctity degradation foundation evolved initially in response to the adaptive challenge of the omnivore's dilemma, and then to the broader challenge of living in a world of pathogens and parasites. It includes the behavioral immune system, which can make us wary of It includes a behavioral immune system which can make us wary of a diverse array of symbolic objects and threats. It makes it possible for people to invest objects with irrational and extreme values, both positive and negative, which are important for binding groups together. All right. So that's his theory on why those things came about, why those five moral foundations began in our early monkey brains, and then how they have evolved over. Not really how they've evolved, but what we've done because of those. A little bit of how we behave because of those foundations. He explains how the left employ care and harm. They employ care/harm and fairness/cheating foundations deeper than the right does. And he also explains how the right employs all five foundations broadly and consequently connect with more voters. So the left, again, he does studies and he talks about everything that he's studied in his research. I'm just cherry picking the data. So the left they're more passionate in regards to care and fairness within their society and in their politics, and then basically absent in the other three: loyalty, authority, and sanctity. Or at least they're flexible or fluid with those three. But the right, they hold value to care and fairness less than the left, but they also the right can be or employs more loyalty, authority, and sanctity in their politics as well. Just a little bit of a spoiler. At the end of the book, we talk about politics again in a different context, and he says his whole life he's been a liberal because liberals believe in science, and I'm a scientist, and I'm an atheist, and liberals want what's best for the world, so I'm a liberal, and I always vote liberal. And then as he got older, he dove more into the conservative world and learned more about conservative politics, and not like right-wing, right-wing. He uses a different word. I think he talks about, quote, social conservatives. And he admires a certain few people in that regard. Again, we'll talk about it later, but I'm just sharing this now because this is a guy who has been liberal his whole life, and I don't know if he ever said he now votes conservative. I think he just has always disregarded the conservative stance, but has now, after studying it, realizes where the left falls short, and it's mostly by not addressing the last three moral foundations in their politics. So the right can reach a broader audience because they employ all five moral foundations. And again, our moral foundations speak to our intuition. They speak to our gut feelings, right? And our gut feelings is what's driving. It's what's driving the car. It's the elephant. We're not in control. And then we reason why we have these experiences with our thinking brain or with our rational mind. So, and I think I make a note later on too that the left can be ineffective in their politics because they reason with their group. They reason to the public. They speak to reason, but the right speaks more to our intuition, which is more influential. Anyway, I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but those are some thoughts. Some other notes that I took from this chapter: empathy towards strangers is not innate. Yep, tons of talk about in-group bias versus out-group. We're always biased towards our in-group, and as we engage more with our groups, especially with our in-group, our confirmation bias is and reinforced, and then we'll talk about more about in groups and out groups more, but especially stemming from the ancestral, our ancestors were concerned about their tribe. They were concerned about their immediate group, and it was always usually a small band of maybe 10, 15, 20, 25 hunter-gatherers, and competing against other outside groups, out groups, competing against each other. So there's a bias towards supporting and helping and looking after our in groups than there is about being altruistic or empathetic towards out groups. All right. Brooke Kelly, libtards. Excellent comment. Yeah. Repugnance may be the only thing that reminds us that even if something disgusting is done with consent, it still isn't favorable for evolution. He tells a gruesome story about a guy who consented clearly that he wanted to be dismembered and eaten basically alive and sexually abused. And the video, yeah, it was just crazy. But it was all consensual. This guy that ate this other guy eventually got caught, went to court, but because it was all like that, thinking he shares tons of stories, and a lot of his research is done. He shares all of his research, and he talks about taboo. Okay, for example, in his research to determine a lot of where morality comes from, he asks a random group of people a bunch of taboo questions, like, is it wrong to eat your dog after your dog dies? Or at least, or he tells the story and say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It goes more like this. Lucy had a dog and her dog died, and before burying it, she ate part of the dog. How do you feel about this? And then stories like Mark and Julie are brother and sister, and they go on vacation and they decide to have sex, and they use double contraception, so they're not getting pregnant. How does that make you feel? Or what do you think about like crazy taboo questions? And again, this is in regard to the harm and fairness. Is morality just about harm and fairness? Well, it's not, because overwhelmingly and all across the board, people say eating your dead dog is not okay, and siblings having sex is not okay. And we can't really like when people say, well, nobody was harmed and it was fair, everyone consented. Why do you feel like that's wrong? And it's hard to explain, to say, why is it wrong to eat your dead dog? Because if you're asking me why is it wrong, I guess technically it's not, because if you prepare, if you prepare the meal and it's the right way, I guess technically there's nothing quote unquote wrong with it, but something feels wrong about it. Incest always feels wrong. And in the example, he says that people will respond and say, well, I hear that if siblings have sex, that their kids will be deformed. And the researcher says, well, they used double contraception and it was just a one-time thing. And so they're definitely not getting pregnant. So nobody's going to be harmed. How does it make you feel? And everyone still says it's wrong. So this is more in support to his point, to part two, that there's more to morality than harm and fairness. So, mashed potatoes, eating dogs. Now that's an idea I can get behind. Okay. No, thank you. All right. So yeah, that was the moral foundations of politics. Let's keep going. Chapter 8, the conservative advantage. In sum, the right speaks better to our intuitions, which is more influential to the individual than the left does, who speaks more to our reasons. See, I keep getting ahead of myself. He also adds revisions to his moral foundations theory. He adds liberty and oppression, liberty/oppression foundation, like tyranny versus egalitarian, authoritarianism versus egalitarianism. And he says the fairness foundation, he includes proportionality to the fairness foundation. People want to see good people rewarded and bad people punished, or karma. There's a, if you remember reading Karma by Siddhartha, when he says awareness, there is he shares that karma is the most popular word, or it's the most, it's in the most languages. Karma's been adopted into more languages than any other word. People, yes, and then this kind of reinforces that. People want to see good people rewarded for their good deeds and bad people punished for their bad deeds. It's just something in it's in our bodies. It's in our brains. And he includes that to the fairness foundation. Another I took from this chapter, I said he reiterates dominance hierarchies and that our ancestors were egalitarian. Jordan Peterson talks about that in his book, The 12 Rules of Life. Weinstein, I don't know how to say his last name. Weinstein and Heather Heying talk about that. Sapiens, Yuval Harari talks about that. Our ancestors they fought, they competed for dominance, alpha males. There was obvious hierarchy, but they were still egalitarian, which I'm learning is they still viewed all humans as equal. They viewed each other as equal. They worked together. They shared their food, their bounty. Our early ancestors learned to be egalitarian, even though there was still a clear order of dominance. Haidt says that changed during the agricultural revolution. All right. That wraps up part 2. There's more to morality than harm and fairness. Let me get some agua. Part 3. Morality binds and blinds. I said in the preface to this to part 3, the following of this book describe how what we experience as humans, the morals we instill in our cultures and our groups, and the rites and rituals we contribute further bind us to our morals and to our in-groups, and they also blind us to the appearance of righteousness, to the righteousness of these things. Brooke says, harm isn't just a physical thing. You can really mentally harm a person, and sleeping with your brother would be mentally destructive. But both parties consented. They both wanted to do it. That's the point. They both wanted to do it. They both consented. They both were willing, and so if it was rape, then that's a completely different thing. But the point of his research was it was consensual. Yeah, maybe it'll fuck you up afterwards. It probably would, but not part of the research. The point of the research was to point out that we can, if that the morality extends beyond what is fair and what causes harm, or what is what's right and wrong. Anyway, yeah, sorry, that comment came in a little, or at least I'm just seeing it. All right, chapter 9. Why are we so groupish? In sum, natural selection worked presumably on different levels amongst individuals within their in-groups, and then from group to group, groups competing against groups through natural selection. Haidt explains group selection in 4 exhibits. I wrote them down. Do I need a 254? Let me just get... Yeah, I don't need to read all this. So Haidt organizes group selection. Yeah, so individual selection makes sense, right? We evolved to have ears And the hair, we used to be full of hair, but we're losing hair to get more sunlight, and have uh, we have an appendable, or we have a the thumb, our thumbs. What do you what? Anyway, we have thumbs, ears. We can hear, we can see, we can taste, we can smell. That's individual natural selection. Um, he also argues there through um, actually he says Darwin argued group selection, but it was his theories were drowned out by something else that happened at the time. I don't remember what the whole deal was, but Darwin also talked about group selection. So Haidt organizes group selection into 4 exhibits. Exhibit A, humans worked together and were more successful than solo humans. So humans learned that their chances of survival and their chances for to find food and to reproduce were greater when they worked in groups. That's the first exhibit. Exhibit B, shared intentionality and mental representations emerged. A quote I took from Exhibit B is, humans construct moral communities out of shared norms, institutions, and gods that they fight, kill, and die to defend. Not fire. Die to defend. No. Selfish desires / actions that come from shared intentionality. So, Exhibit A, humans learned the chances of survival and reproduction are greater when we work together as groups. Exhibit B is we learn to share our intentions. We learn to share our mental representations. Well, they emerged first. We started having mental representations and envisioning things for ourselves, for our group, and for the future. And we learned how to share those ideas. Exhibit C, tribal instincts evolved, like shame, guilt, cooperation. They evolved. So I have another note from Exhibit C. Evolution instills enough variability in all genes. Oh yeah, this is my dog comment. That docile wolves became pets / partners. Docile cows and pigs became farm animals. And similarly, antisocial humans were exiled from their group / tribe, and ultra-aggressive humans were not favorable partners for hunting, foraging, or mating. So, not docile, but cooperative humans, the cooperative gene was favored amongst groups to work together. And extreme aggression and isolated genes were not favorable for human groups. And like I'm trying to explain, these humans were usually exiled from their group or shunned. And like I've said, like everyone's saying, the chances of survival outside of the group are lower than being within the group, remaining within the working together. So genes, people that were just better at cooperating, that felt shame and guilt for bad decisions and changed those bad decisions or changed their decision making and made better decisions, stayed within the group, and their chances of survival grew. That's Exhibit C. And then the fourth exhibit for group selection is human evolution sped up. Extreme environmental changes force humans to change rapidly to survive. One example he shares that is fascinating to me is he shares maybe, I think it was like 70,000 years ago to maybe 140,000 years ago, there was a catastrophic event that wiped out most humans. Like, population declined to like below 10,000 humans on Earth about 100,000 years ago. So, it was like another example of an Adam and Eve. Human population bottlenecked. They called it bottleneck something. So, there were a lot of humans at one time, or human species, and the population bottlenecked. And so all humans alive today are ancestors from these few people that survived. And then population blew up again to now we're at fucking almost 8 billion people. So sorry, Brooke, I saw your Brooke says, just because you consent doesn't mean that there will not be repercussions from that socially familially. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I just don't think that was the point of the study. I'm sorry. Yeah, I agree though. That's why we all say incest is wrong. There's just I'm not justifying incest, and neither is he. We're trying to the point of the research is to explain why or is to try to have people explain why incest is wrong, why they feel it's wrong. Even so, anyway, sorry, but those are the 4 areas of evolution. So through those bottlenecks, Exhibit D is through those bottlenecks, humans had to learn how to adapt quickly to a rapidly changing environment, and just like all areas of evolution, favorable genes survived and grew or evolved and developed, especially quicker when population density was low. That's his theory anyway. So that's chapter 9, why we're groupish. We're groupish because humans work better together than solo. We could share our intentionality and mental representations. Tribal instincts evolved to work together. The instincts that evolved were things like cooperation and guilt for bad decisions, and then those traits evolved quickly through catastrophic events. All right, chapter 10. This is where we get into some crazy stuff, as if all of this hasn't been crazy enough already. Chapter 10 is called The Hive Switch. In sum, we evolved to live within groups. That's the note that I have. But he also shares where happiness comes from, 283. So before I talk about hives and hive mentality and the hive switch, I want to share what he writes about happiness. He says, when I began writing The Happiness Hypothesis, I believed that happiness came from within, as Buddha and the Stoic philosophers said thousands of years ago. You'll never make the world conform to your wishes, so focus on changing yourself and your desires. But by the time I finished writing, I had changed my mind. Happiness comes from between. It comes from getting the right relationships between yourself and others, yourself and your work, and yourself and something larger than yourself. Once you understand our dual nature, including our groupish overlay, you can see why happiness comes from between. We evolved to live in groups. Our minds are designed not only to help us win the cooperation within, Our minds were designed not only to help us win the competition within our groups, but also to help us unite with those in our group to win competitions across groups. Okay, so that's his theory on happiness. Some notes I took from this chapter. Let's talk about hives, hive mentality, the hive switch. He says that Homo sapiens are actually, we should be called Homo duplex or something like that, duplexus. That we're comprised of 2 different species. He says we're 90. I think it's just the analogy. We're 90% chimp and we're 10% bees. That's where this hive comes from. So let me talk about that for a second. This chapter is Hyde's hypothesis that, quote, human beings are conditional hive creatures, close quote. Humans have the ability to transcend self-interest for something larger than ourselves, part of a larger whole. Transcendence emerges from, quote, collective effervescence, which is a new word to me, which means vivacity or enthusiasm. Collective effervescence or collective enthusiasm, close quote. 3 ways that he mentions this switch happens. He says there's many ways, but three popular ways that he's studied: awe in nature. Think about this. Think about times like this transcendence feeling where you feel like, oh, there's so much, like where you feel meaning in the universe, you feel meaning in your life, you feel like overwhelming feelings of gratitude or of love, or even on the opposite spectrum where you feel overwhelmingly depressed for a moment or anxious or sad. He says these are like, so you get the overwhelming good feelings from what I'm about to read. The overwhelming bad feelings are when you neglect doing what your body needs, like what I'm about to read. When you don't take care of yourself and you don't behave how our biology is designed. Like he's saying, we're designed to live within groups. We're designed to have healthy relationships across the board. So without talking about the negative side, let's talk about this transcending in the positive way. These times where you feel overwhelmingly feelings of gratitude, overwhelming feelings of joy or peace or satisfaction. This is this switch he's talking about, and it's activated in a lot of different ways, like I said. But these three are the ones that he's studied. He talks about awe in nature, being a part of, being out in the world and viewing something magnificent and saying, "Wow, this is amazing." I've experienced this where I've seen something magnificent that, wow, this is insane, and it's totally incomprehensible. I remember one time driving to my mission into California. I stopped at Tahoe, and we stopped at this lookout point at Tahoe, and it was prime time fall colors season, and the trees were beautiful, and the lake was beautiful, and the sky was blue, and I remember thinking, I can't imagine a place more beautiful. It's the feeling that there's so much more to my existence than just me or what it's the awness. It's hard to explain, but you know how to, if you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. Usually it's all of this is, they're all related in the sense that these other points I'm about to make, they're all related in the sense that it draws you to something greater than yourself. So the first one he talks about is awe in nature, because nature is big and beautiful and mysterious. The second he talks about are hallucinogens. He shares the 9 from a study that he shared, 266. There are 9 long-lasting effects from hallucinogens. 1, unity, including loss of sense of self and a feeling of underlying oneness. We've talked about oneness, huh? We've talked about this. We've talked about the feeling of being included with in the world, our spirits connected to everything, all living things. We're not our bodies. We are one with the world, with the universe, with each other. Unity is the first one from hallucinogens. 2, transcendence of time and space. 3, deeply felt positive mood. 4, a sense of sacredness. 5, a sense of gaining intuitive knowledge that felt deeply and authoritatively true. Gaining intuitive knowledge, okay? 6, paradoxicality. 7, difficulty describing what happened. 8, transiency. That was just me. 7, difficulty describing what just happened. 8, transiency, with all subjects of the study returning to normal within a few hours. 9, persisting positive changes in attitude and behavior. And a guy that from the study, he says, we took such an infinitesimal amount of psilocybin, and yet it connected me to infinity. Yeah, I want a microdose for that reason. I don't want to trip balls. I want to, I'm scared of that experience, but I do want a microdose. So that's 2. Connecting us with the greater, the bigger part of the universe is, or with something greater than ourselves. There's nature, there's hallucinogens, and the third, he says, raves, which I think is silly, but from the raves section, he shares an example of the guy that created Zappos.com, the shoes website. Just a young, strapping young man, successful and like just by the book. Went to a rave, no drugs, and right here he says, "What I experienced next changed my perspective forever. Yes, the decorations and lasers were pretty cool, and yes, this was the largest single full room full of people dancing that I had ever seen. But neither of those things explain the feeling of awe." There it is again, awe, that I was experiencing. As someone who is usually known as being the most logical and rational person in a group, I was surprised to find myself swept with an overwhelming feeling of spirituality. Not in the religious sense, but a sense of deep connection with everyone who was there, as well as the rest of the universe. There was a feeling of no judgment. Here there was no sense of self-consciousness, or even that anyone was dancing to be seen dancing. Everyone was facing the DJ, who was elevated up on a stage. The entire room felt like one massive, united tribe of thousands of people, and the DJ was the tribal leader of the group. The steady, wordless electronic beats were the unifying heartbeats that synchronized the crowd. It was as if the existence of individual consciousness had disappeared and been replaced by a single unifying group consciousness. Yeah, raves, never been to a rave. This doesn't really make me want to go to a rave, but the experience is the point of this chapter. We're selfish creatures, but there's a way to transcend that selfishness and to experience something greater than us, to transcend ourselves, to work amongst each other, and to actually to be altruistic with our in-group, and he calls that parochial altruism. But this sense of oneness with everything else that we experience, and it's usually short-lived, brings us all together as humanity especially. This is the hive switch. That experience is called the switch. All right. That's chapter 10. Mashed Potato says, for some reason, the between thing he just described isn't computing as well for me as the take care of the things you can control mentally. I can't tell if I don't get it because it's a new idea or I disagree. Okay, that's good. Let me go back to it then. Let me go back to it and see if I can. 283. Whoops. Yeah, maybe I rushed through it too quickly. Yeah, okay. So and I like this a ton because it's a direct comment about Buddhism and Stoicism, which are two schools of thought that I've been studying pretty closely for the last year. And he describes, okay, yeah, so I don't want to read it all again, but he says, I believe that happiness came from within. Like Buddha and the Stoic philosopher said thousands of years ago, comes from within. You'll never make the world conform to your wishes, which is true. So focus on changing yourself and your desires. But by the time I finished writing, I had changed my mind. Happiness comes from between. It comes from getting the right relationships between yourself and others, yourself and your work, and yourself and something larger than yourself. Once you understand our dual nature, including our groupish overlay, you can see why happiness comes from between. We evolved to live within groups. Our minds are designed not only to help us win the competition within our groups, but also to help us unite with those in our group to win competitions across groups. I think the point is, if I'm going to try to describe the between idea, I think it's, he's saying our existence isn't a selfish existence. We feel like it's a selfish existence. Brooke, I see your comment. Does he say in the book that the founder of Zappos died in an overdose in a shed in his friend's backyard? Is that true? Did that really happen, or are you being facetious? Because if that's true, that's crazy. Yeah, the between theory. I think the between theory is that we've evolved to not be selfish. So as from a selfish perspective, it's to say I can't control my environment, or I can't control the things that happen to me. I can only control my reaction. Yes, that's true. But happiness, it comes also from having the right relationship with our groups as well. Not being an outcast and not being rejected. I shouldn't have closed the page. 283, is that what it was? Because I think that's what he's saying. It comes from between the right relationships between you and others, you and your work, and you and something larger than yourself. That's where happiness comes from. It doesn't come from, like, peace. Yeah, and I've described it this way too. Happiness is a result of meeting our biological needs. Yes. Oh, that just resonated really well. Happiness is a result of meeting our biological needs. And according to Haidt, an extension of our biological needs is to be accepted or to feel included or to feel loved by our in-group. That's happiness. Peace is different. Peace is finding, is having clarity and peace through suffering, especially involuntary suffering. When we go through shitty things that we can't control or we can't get out of, can we be still? Can we feel peace? So peace and happiness are still different. Happiness comes by meeting our biological needs. End of story, right? I think that's the principle. So the between idea, I'm running with that. I like what Haidt's saying. Happiness doesn't come just by being selfish and being solo your whole life. That's not happy. That's not meeting our biological needs. Happiness comes by having good relationships. Happiness comes by meeting our biological needs. And as he argues, part of our biological needs is having the right relationships with others, our family, our friends, our group, and then with something greater, like those three examples I shared. Having the right relationship with the oneness, or the greater than life experiences, with the hive switch. It's the hive switch. Sweet. I feel good about it. Tell me about Zappos, though. If the Zappos story is true, then his hallucinogen example. When did this book get published? I don't think I shared that. Haidt, so he's got those two books, and this one was published 2012, so 10 years. The first vintage books edition, January 2013. So, sweet. Oh, Google it. It's a fact. Crazy. Yeah, maybe he went to that rave and yeah, it all went south for him. And maybe it was after the book was published. That's funny. His death is not funny. That's not what I mean. But the story and the timing is funny. It's comedy. All right. Chapter 11. Religion is a team sport. I'm an hour and 28 minutes. See, I told you that I'm only reading the summaries too. But there's just so much meat to all of this. But I need some water real fast. Haidt claims. Oh, before I read anything, I'm going to go to the summary. Oh, I didn't even write a summary. Okay, that's all right. Let's keep going then. Haidt claims, quote, religions are sets of cultural practices that co-evolved with our religions. Oh, I'm fucking this up. Quote, religions are sets of cultural practices that co-evolved with our religious minds by a process of multi-level selection. So more selection, but now we're talking about our spirituality. Religions and religious minds are parochial. And that's a new word for me too. That means like narrow or not a lot of options. Let me tell you what Google says for parochial. Narrow-minded. Okay. So religions and religious minds are parochial. They're narrow-minded. There are two running theories for the origin of religion. There's the new atheist religion origin story, and then there's the anthropological religion origin story that we talk about here. So the new atheist religion origin story emerged after 9/11 by some popular figures like Sam Harris Brooke that we talked about. Sam Harris, he talks about one of the books Sam Harris wrote. Anyway, the new atheist religion origin story is a combo of three things. A, hypersensitive agency detection, which is this is a principle that Haidt talks about. Hypersensitive agency detection is recognizing faces in things. Like, have you ever seen a face in a tree, or seen a face in a cloud, or in a shadow, or something? Like, you recognize, like, our brains are hardwired for face detection and face recognition. And sometimes we overcorrect, or our brains make mistakes, and then we see faces in trees and we see faces. We're designed to recognize other humans or other living things, right? So we recognize faces and things, and sometimes our brains misfire, and then we assign meaning to random events. This is hypersensitive agency detection misfiring. That plus a gullible gene that is prone to believing in God anecdotes, or using God to explain to explain our brain misfiring. Whatever example you want to use, something shitty happening, and you assign God as the meaning. So you take the brain misfiring plus a gullible gene equals an explanation of the world and its phenomena, where the most popular stories spread the quickest and are seeded the deepest in believers. This is the new atheist religion origin story. It's not Haidt's preferred theory. He prefers the anthropological religion origin story, which is the hypersensitive agency detection misfiring. We have the we see agency where agency isn't, plus a gullible culture prone to believing in God and God anecdotes. So not a gene, it's not inherent in the body, it's in our culture. We have a gullible culture gene, or culture prone to believing in God anecdotes, which equals groups that are more cohesive and cooperative, that gives a competitive advantage over other groups and to spread ideas. So I think, in short, or just to summarize those 2 points, the new atheist story is we have a gullible gene, which makes us dig deep into our religious tendencies and to assign meaning to something that doesn't exist, or where meaning isn't, which explains the world and its phenomena by popular stories, and like the most popular stories win. Like Christianity, or like Buddhism, or all of the religions that exist today, or the most popular ones today, right? It's just like the best stories to explain the world and its phenomena is the new atheist version, and the anthropological story is it's our culture that's gullible. It's not our people, but the reason our culture is gullible is because it allows people to be more cohesive. Just like earlier we explained that cohesiveness is a favorable genetic trait. Gullibleness is also a favorable genetic trait because it allows people to work together. Just a random example, and I don't know how applicable it is, but like the Crusades, where the Christians raided Europe in like 1000 AD, and just killed thousands of people. But it was because of a gullible culture, not because of a gullible person. It was a gullible culture where it created group cohesiveness. Again, I'll read the brain misfiring plus a gullible culture makes groups more cohesive and cooperative, gives them competitive advantages over other groups because they're more cohesive. Again, in group versus in group. There's been group on group selection, natural selection. The better groups survive over weaker groups. So the global culture gives competitive advantage over other groups, and then this allows for more ideas to spread. This is again, it's theory, and I'm learning it as I'm fucking talking about it. It might not make a ton of sense, but this is the theory. Quote: creating gods who can see everything and who hate cheaters and oath breakers turn out to be a good way to reduce cheating and oath breaking. Creating gods who see everything, who can see everything, and who hate cheaters and oath breakers turn out to be a very good way to reduce cheating and oath breaking. Another quote: sacredness binds people together and then blinds them to the arbitrariness of the practice. This is the key for cooperation without kinship. I haven't mentioned it enough, but part 3 of this book is morality binds and blinds. So when you're in groups, share the morality, you share a belief, that group binds together and they're reinforced, and their confirmation bias reinforces their belief, but it blinds them. It blinds them to other possibilities, especially when you're a medieval peasant and you don't have the internet to research what you're learning. You're just being told that this is what God is telling me as your church leader, and it says that we need to band together and go kill all of these pagans because God will punish us if we don't. It blinds you to truth and to reality and to other forms of reality. So this is how morality binds us together and to our principles, but also blinds us to reality and even to truth in some instances. Religions connect people to something higher than themselves, like the hive effect. Religious belonging promotes camaraderie, not religious believing. It's religious belonging promotes camaraderie, which is, again, a favorable trait. I shared the definition of morality as he put it. Morals arise as a means to bring people together to work cohesively, evoking parochial altruism. So I loved this chapter about religions. So the origin of religion, it's not necessarily a gullible gene. We're not gullible individuals. Our cultures are gullible to believe things because at least our ancestors were, because it allowed them to work together, to build things, to conquer other neighboring tribes, neighboring groups, to strengthen your in-group. That was the idea. Is this matter of evolution. All right, the last chapter. Why can't we all disagree more constructively? This is the one about politics, and I'll do it swiftly. In sum, people are predisposed to certain political moral matrices. Then their biases are repeatedly confirmed. Yeah, same thing about religious matrices, but we're talking about politics now, especially just how our government operates and how we behave as people. So some notes I took are, there are 3 major steps from genes to a voting adult. 3 major steps from our genes to making decisions as an adult, voting. The first step is genes make brains. Genes develop brains that are more or less reactive to threats and produce more or less pleasure when exposed to novelty, change, and new experiences. Some brains are more sensitive to threats, some brains are less sensitive to threats, and some brains find more pleasure when exposed to novelty, change, and new experiences than others. Genetically, that's just how brains are. And Mother Nature loves to instill variability in people because this is natural selection, theory of natural selection. Mother Nature is choosing which genes make this species work better together. So she makes some of us sensitive to threats. She makes some of us love pleasure more than others, and then now we're, it just over thousands of years, the genes that survive the longest are the ones that reproduce the more are the ones that are favorable. That's natural selection, baby. So natural selection found it useful to have ears and mouths and noses and eyes, and to have I can't remember the word, an opposable thumb, whatever that means, to have thumbs. That's just Mother Nature. And then we survived. We aren't better than our ancestors who didn't evolve this way. Like, I try to explain this, or at least this is the way I understand it. We're not more successful than monkeys because we learned how to, we evolved into humans. Monkeys are still are a genetic success because they still exist. They're still alive. They've adapted through thousands of years of evolution, and they're still alive. That's the point. Like, if your genes are surviving, then your genes are a success. But the species that are going extinct now, especially because of the human intervention in the world, how we influence the environment, we've fucked up the world so much that we've changed it so fast that lots of species have been wiped out because they can't evolve quick enough with the changing world. Before we had all of our worldly intervention, with the Industrial Revolution, even the Agricultural Revolution, before all of those things, the world was pretty much the same all the time, which allowed the animals to evolve slowly and for Mother Nature to experiment with new genes. This is, I'm learning it, so I love to explain it because it helps me understand it a little better. That's why I do this fucking podcast, baby. So the first step, genes make brains. Mother Nature makes some brains different than others. The second step is traits guide children along different paths. There are 3 levels of personality. The first level is dispositional traits, dispositional traits are what I just explained: more sensitive to threats, deeper pleasure to new experiences, etc. The second level, that's the first level of traits. The second level of personality is characteristic adaptations, which is where traits that emerge as we grow, usually a result of how our disposition traits react to the environment. He gives a really good example in the book regarding all of this, but to be brief, we have our traits. Our brain makes our genes. There is characteristic adaptations where the world, we react to circumstances in the world because of our traits, and then the consequences of those actions develop our characteristic adaptations. And then the third level to personality is life narratives. And we construct our own life narratives. Quote, psychologists connect their quantitative data to a more qualitative understanding of narratives people create to make sense of their lives. Does that quote make sense? I think I took the wrong quote. But we create life narratives. So, we're born with a brain, and then as kids, we just are experiencing the world and reacting to things because of how our brains are developed. And then we're punished for behavior that's favorable, we're punished for behavior that's not favorable. We're rewarded for favorable behavior. And then our personalities develop because of those things. So somebody that has been born with a brain that's that finds pleasure in new experiences is likely to go set out on adventures and stuff or whatever to try new things, and then is either rewarded or punished based on the culture for doing those things. And then the punishment or reward that they receive for that experience creates their character. And then from that point, we write our life narrative. We try to explain the feelings that we have and the beliefs that we have because of our experiences. It's just like solidified who we are. His example in this is really good. He kind of like paints a fake picture on how people become Republican, how people become liberals based off of these three steps, how our personalities develop, So the third point, or the third step to a voting adult, is our life narrative. It's the third personality level, and it's the third step to a voting adult. We write our life narrative based on our characteristic experiences or characteristic adaptations, and then make decisions. We vote. Quote, intuitions come first, so anything we can do to cultivate more positive social connections will alter intuitions and thus downstream reasoning and behavior. Intuitions come first, so anything we can do to cultivate more positive social connections will alter intuitions and thus downstream reasoning and behavior. That's it. So, if we want to reiterate, the point of this book is about why it's so hard for people to get along. It's hard. People have a hard time getting along. One, because in groups are have evolved to compete against other in groups, group on group conflict. We get along with our in group. In fact, we really get along with our in group, like the people we go to church with, the people that we vote with, the people we play sports with, play games with. We love our families, our friends. We love our in group. We fight against outside groups, against other groups. That's how we've evolved as people. That's everything that we've been trying to explain. That's why it's hard for people to get along. The hope of this book is to make conversations around morality, politics, religion more common, civil, and fun for everyone to get along. And for everyone to get along, I think it's really important that we understand where we come from. What influences our beliefs and our decision making and our voting and all. We have to understand why we feel the way we feel, and this book is supposed to explain that. In conclusion, he shares three main takeaways. There are three main takeaways. Quote. They're actually all three are quotes, so I'll just read them. The first is, we are deeply intuitive creatures whose gut feelings drive our strategic reasoning. 2, beware of anyone who insists that there is one true morality for all people, times, and places. There's not. 3, we all have the capacity to transcend self-interest and become simply part of a whole. It's the portal to many of life's most cherished experiences. How many times? Well, if you've ever listened to Rogan talk about politicians, he says if everybody could just take acid or mushrooms. He doesn't say acid. He says mushrooms. If everyone could take mushrooms one time, we'd all figure our shit out, because it transcends your selfish tendencies to cooperate with the hive, with everybody, with the out groups, with all of the other groups. We become so entrenched with our in groups that we lose sight of the bigger picture, and we lose sight that we're all humans. We're all humans on Earth, sharing the same resources and trying to survive. We lose sight that we're supposed to be helping each other, so we fight each other because it's group on group conflict, and it's been that way for all of human. That's how we've evolved. We've evolved for group on group conflict. We lose sight. He actually doesn't say we should get rid of groups. We should all be one group. He doesn't say that. He says, and he shares research from someone else who says it's actually really good to have the left and the right in politics, because it allows for. We have to find middle ground. When you work well together, you find middle ground. But the only way groups can work together is if they take mushrooms, or if they get into nature, or if they go to a rave, or whatever your experience is that will transcend your selfish interests to view other groups and to feel part of the whole, to feel connected with everybody again. That's how we work together. That's I think I blazed through the note, but the transcendence, the hive switch, is the way that humans can cohesively work with other groups, to work together. But we don't do it, or at least we don't always do it. I've never done mushrooms, and I've been in nature, and being in nature doesn't make me altruistic, but it gives it inspires good feelings, and just like he's saying, there's lots of different ways to inspire good feelings, to have this switch, so that we can be more connected as a human species, to be more cooperative and cohesive. We still have our Mother Nature has still made people to be left wing, people to be right wing. We need the groups. We need our groups, but we need to work together. We need to do acid every now and then so that we can work together. Huh? That's whatever. That's the point of the book. Mashed potatoes. That book was a lot. Haha. It was a lot. This was a lot of info, but I'm really, really, really stoked. I think I got the gist. I think I really. but I only think I got it because I've read so many other books that are so similar in a lot of ways. So it's like combining a bunch of different thoughts into one book. It made sense, and I'm really, a lot of the research was kind of droning and boring. I know I don't get everything out of every book that I read, but this one was a lot, and I think I got it. And I think I kind of think explained it pretty well too. I mean, I didn't explain it; he explained it. I'm just regurgitating what he wrote, his summaries, really, and then sharing my thoughts. But yeah, lots to grasp in that book. But there's a way for our conflicting groups in the world today to work more cohesively, and you don't need to do acid to be cohesive. You just need to you need to be willing to experience these good feelings that come by being in nature, doing drugs, or going to a rave. What are some other examples? Like working together in your team for a greater good. Just things that induce altruism. The Hive Switch. It's very good. Anyway, that was The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Why good people are divided by politics and religion. Yeah, I mean, everything I said about politics, you can say the same thing about religion, by religious groups, the conflicts between religious groups. We have our biases because Mother Nature has made us to believe certain things because of our genes, because of the way our brain is made. But that doesn't mean religions should be abolished. Religions make people work well together, and it's an excellent way. It's an excellent vehicle to share ideas and create new ones. But the issue is we use our religions, we use our politics against one another. We don't use them to support or help each other. We use them to fight each other and try to bring the other groups down. That's our primitive instinct, to fight the out groups, to fight the people that don't agree with us or believe the same things as us. But we gotta be better than that as a human species and in our groups. We gotta be better than that. So the book I'm reading next week will be most likely less intense. It's called Set for Life, an all-out approach. Where is it? An all-out. Oh, it doesn't give me the full name. An all-out approach to early financial freedom and something, but I can't see the rest. It's a money book. We're gonna do some money book next week by Scott Trench. I haven't bought it yet, so I'm just looking at it on my phone. Set for Life by Scott Trench. It'll be a money book. Be here next week. If you want to come here live, share your thoughts. We won't be talking about incest next week. We'll be talking about money. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch Mondays around 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and I'll be posting it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can find links to all my shit on my blog, where I'm starting to write again. I have blogs. I have a couple new blogs posted. Caden Kelly's blog.wordpress.com. I got links to all of my shit in my social media. If you follow me on social media, it's all good stuff, and all I'm trying to do is keep myself accountable to be a better person, to be healthier, wealthier, wiser, and more at peace. And hopefully you can do the same for yourself. So this week, if you want to apply some life lessons from this book, try to do something to connect yourself with the oneness of the world, with the human species, to transcend your selfishness and to do better with other people, to not be so self-centered or to be so biased or to be so aggressive against people that don't agree with you or have opposing. And I guess it's tough, when you're like, hey, I want to understand your perspective, but other people are like, fuck you and your perspective. Why would you want to talk to them? Don't talk to those people. There's a lot of reasonable people on both sides of the aisle. So you got to, go have a good conversation with them and try to be productive. But figure out, first of all, if you don't already, figure out what you believe religiously, politically. That's the point of this book. And then figure out how to be constructive and make good decisions that are beneficial for all of humanity. And that's the point. So go do that this week. That's your challenge for this week. And we'll be here next one. July 25th. Yeah, should be here. 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. See you then. Thanks for tuning in.
して